We are here for part 2 of how I would continue the Batman Arkham series, and we're going to hop into it in just a second. But before we do, my wife has been working very, very hard on Enchanted Glamor. This is a wonderful place where you can buy gifts and jewelry and all kinds of other stuff for loved ones, maybe a mother, maybe a father figure, maybe a mother figure, maybe a MILF. I don't know what's going on in your life. I'd prefer that last one. Please tell me about it so I can live vicariously through you. But check it out. It's in the description down below. We have all kinds of stuff, and it goes to help support the channel and some of your favorite YouTubers. Please just pretend we're some of your favorite YouTubers. Don't correct me in the comments. I need the boost today. And check it out. So let's hop into it. How I would continue the Batman Arkham series if I held the keys and the reins to the franchise and had unlimited money to throw behind it. So, again, I will say for the quadrillionth time, or the morbillionth time if you're a morbhead like me, that I know it is much easier to sit and armchair pitch a game than it is to make it. I am not a complete and utter moron, although I'm on my way. But this is just kind of my dream game, which is an Arkham Origins sequel. And to the people who didn't listen last time and said, I thought you said it was going to be a night sequel, that one's coming up too in a future part. These are kind of intricate plans. I'm a developer now. I'm basically Hideo Kojima, but white. So, here's the thing. I was going to get into side activities with this, and as far as side activities go for this game, I think it's important to mention that I personally would advocate for the inclusion of the nemesis system from Shadow of Mordor. However, I wouldn't make it as central to the game as it was in that franchise. Now, if you don't know what the nemesis system is in Shadow of War or Shadow of Mordor, they are WB Games properties that involve Lord of the Rings, and the nemesis system is both beautifully simple and incredibly complicated at the same time. And I know I got into a tiny bit of this in the last video, but bear with me, it does actually play into the rest of the side activities here, so it's important. This is a system that was designed at WB Games from Monolith, and this system involves interactions between the player character and other characters throughout the world, which essentially creates hundreds of unique small storylines that are randomly generated. Characters in those games are randomly generated orcs or uruks who encounter the main player Talion, who I almost read as who encounter the main Italian. He is able to mark characters and turn them to his side through his powers that he has in-game, essentially creating a small personal army to go up against the other armies of Middle-earth. However, when he loses these characters, they also grow in the ranks of the overall army, creating certain rivalries or villain storylines between the player character and this character in the game. Each of these enemies can actually level up and be encouraged to level up by the player character, whether they're being nurtured in the background by kind of watching over them, or just allowing them to do their own thing and going with a survival of the fittest mentality. Maybe this orc or uruk that you are trying to get on your side is attacked by another one that is a higher level, but you step in, kill that person, and then mark the character that you want, and now they're on your team. Or maybe you don't want them to know that you're the reason they're progressing through the ranks early on. You kind of stay back, take out their competition while helping that character grow. I think this allows for an almost unlimited game time inside activities as you progress characters through an RPG-like style progression board, as well as progressing the main story. Now, here's the thing with this. I think that one issue a lot of people have with the Batman Arkham games is that once the story is actually done and you have beaten all of it, you've done some of the Easter eggs, you've probably watched Batman Arkham videos and, hey, maybe even my Easter egg series, some guys like that, and you've done everything, pretty much all there is to do is to restart the game. The city's pretty dead. You grab those collectibles, maybe New Game Plus it if you feel like it, and you're done. The thing with the Nemesis system is that you really have a logical reason to actually go back to your completed file and interact with the city. It makes the game feel more alive. It makes it feel like there's still things to do. And in a way, it actually combines some of the best parts of things like Sims, Pokemon, and even, Tamagotchis, pocket pets, that kind of stuff. In the past, where you used to be able to have these characters that you would slowly nurture in a sim-like environment as they went on. But the thing is, the way I want to include this system, it wouldn't be necessary to just screw around with it for hours and hours and hours like it was in Shadow of War. I don't think you actually necessarily have to have this tie into primary supervillains. You can have it tie into them where you sort of work your way up some of the ranks of their henchmen and then get to a confrontation with them in a quest line structure. I think if you did that, it would have to be more linear than it was in something like Shadow of Mordor or Shadow of War. You'd basically have to have certain set encounters in order to progress that story naturally, because I think that it's really hard to actually have just one encounter with a villain in a game like this and have it be good. But I think that what you can do is include this more as a side thing at the very least, but that ties into the overall narratives of the game. Because I think that the supervillains themselves would probably be above the nemesis system anyways. They could involve randomized thugs and randomized vigilante criminals, though, that you encounter, things that are actually created for the game, and it does sound silly, possibly, but I think it could easily be done, and we've seen Batman storylines do this before. Maybe there's a Batman copycat like you see in a movie like Batman The Dark Knight. I guess it's just called The Dark Knight. You'll know it by the Nolan film, where you would essentially go around stopping crimes and fighting these crime lords and gangsters throughout the course of the city, and maybe you would actually encounter some of these copycats, or maybe you'd encounter randomized criminals or vigilantes that are created. If they can do it with orcs and uruks for WB Games with Monolith, I'm sure this could be done for Batman, because the sky is the limit when it comes to comic books, superheroes, supervillains. There's so much creativity that goes into them, and new ones are actually created all the time, although a lot of them don't catch on. I think allowing the game to sort of do that as well would be very, very interesting to see. And you could also see this tie into the main story as well, playing into the overall storyline. But characters such as Prometheus, Joker, and the other supervillains, personally, that are mainstay names, I would have be above these groups. If anything, they would be the leader of certain factions, and then they would operate in a nemesis system tree above them. So what I mean by that is progressing through the nemesis tree to actually reach them. However, you don't necessarily need to do that either. I think either including this as a robust side activity or tying it into the main game works well. Personally, I'm not sure which I would rather see, even though this is my pitch. I know that's probably a little odd, but I think either way would be good. I just want to avoid something like Shadow of War, where you end up in a position where you have to kind of grind the game for 5 hours just to progress. That's not the kind of nemesis system crap I want to see here. I want to see it more intricately and fluidly incorporated like it was in Shadow of Mordor, and I guess mostly in Shadow of War after they removed the microtransactions, since that was one of the main things that was bogging that game down. This would really allow you to return to the same save file almost indefinitely and continue to play the game long after you've completed the storyline, and you're then able to affect the operation, say, of a villain or of a villain tree, and eventually take down that character through side missions without necessarily hitting a point where you have Two-Face teaming up with the Joker to fight the Penguin and somehow they murder the Penguin through a randomized nemesis system event. I think it would be a lot easier in terms of continuity to have it be something like this. You're progressing through the story, and there is the nemesis system going on as well. There are certain quests that unlock as you go through the game, or certain story missions and side missions that unlock as you go through the game, along with story missions and side missions that unlock as you progress through the nemesis system tree. So maybe you take out a few of Two-Face's henchmen, maybe you turn one of them to your side as an informant, however you want to have that happen, and then you eventually hit a point on that skill tree or that nemesis system tree where you unlock the ability to do the first Two-Face side mission. I think this would work really well as kind of a compromise in the best of both worlds, because you're able to incorporate both of these styles, the classic Arkham style and that more RPG style, into the same game to add to replayability, and you're not ruining continuity, because you would have set endings to those side and main quests that unlock, or you could have some options with them like they did in something like Night. Do you save Ra's al Ghul or not? You know, things like that. But it would be a lot easier in terms of continuity to not work yourself into a corner. There are also different thug opportunities here to turn them to Batman's side. Now, what I mean by that is not we got Batman working with Joe Chill and Two-Face to gun down the 3 Jokers or something like that. This is something that could very easily fly off the rails and turn into a Wattpad fanfiction far too quickly. But you could introduce a lot of different existing concepts for this, such as the Sons of the Batman, which we actually see in The Dark Knight Returns, where they were basically previous criminals. They used to be a member of the Mutants who tried to follow in Batman's footsteps as vigilantes and work for him. However, it would also be very easily to create that storyline and make it super, super cringy. I think you'd have to have someone good working on that to actually make it work. Again, an alternative of this would be something like what you saw in The Dark Knight Knight itself. I had too many Dark Knight movies where you actually see these characters trying to emulate Batman, but they have no affiliation with him, or even a mixture of both. It's not something you need to do tons with, but sort of creating this thing where maybe Batman could intimidate and beat the crap out of and sort of turn people to be informants for him, or he could essentially convince them to join his side in a way, but not have them be running around with guns murdering people. I think those things would be really interesting to see, and it would show how Batman has such an influence over Gotham. We see that throughout the course of the Arkham games. He is this urban legend, this myth who's become greater than a man. He's a story, and he's this force that acts upon the city and the elements in it. So to see him actually interact with and change some of those elements, I think would be very fitting stylistically and thematically, and I think it would be really fun, especially if you could include some stuff where you could customize some of those characters who are on your side, similar to what some of the Assassin's Creed games used to do in the past with having these assassins under you in the Brotherhood who actually worked for you and were apprentices of your character. I think that kind of stuff would be really cool to see. I know it sounds very different for an Arkham game, but I think that if you're going to revisit this franchise, you need to do both. You need to introduce new ideas that are different and expand and change the game while also honoring the legacy of those games from before, and actually fulfilling what they kind of set up. With this too, I think that it would be really interesting to actually see Batman interrogate enemies and see more of that, and see him slowly turn certain ones to his side, or if they won't, send them to jail or whatever. I think that that's something to have in the game because it really does add options to how you want to take things down. Do you want to go through and you're more of a dark, angry Dark Knight and you want to just take down everybody throughout the nemesis system, work your way up to the top, take them down too? Or maybe you're a bit more of a hopeful Batman. You want to actually change some of these people where you can. I think that's the kind of Batman I'd certainly want to be because I think it's very interesting, and I think that that's really the heart of this character, is kind of adding hope. And when you start taking away the hope and stuff like that, it can get very, very dark and kind of I guess I would say sideline itself or derail from the character. But I think having those options would work well because it does give you player agency. I would also want to have certain characters that Batman has a strong impact on in this way. And that would mean, again, that a lot of them would be randomized, but I do think you could have certain little characters who are just not randomized at all, like how we saw certain repeated thug encounters in things like Arkham Origins before. There's a lot that can be done with this to not break continuity, and it's interesting though because, again, there's no later revisitation of this idea in later games. However, you're going to see that when I get to my Arkham Knight sequel, I want to reintroduce this idea again, so it wouldn't be a one-off. It would be something I'd want to see twice, once in this Origin sequel and once in a sequel for Knight. But wait, there's more. In terms of DLC, I know often they are looking at things to cut from a main game to add as DLC later when it comes to AAA video games. This is something we've seen 100 times before, and it's something that I would want to avoid. However, I do think that working conceptually prior to this game's launch, you could start kind of coming up with a DLC roadmap that would be very interesting to expand this game over time, eventually culminating in what we saw with the Game of the Year editions of some of these previous games like Asylum and City. Something that I would love to see with this game is DLC that keeps the game alive, however, that is re-released on a disc later. Okay, this is a big thing for me. This might not be a big thing for someone watching this, but for me, this is a big thing that I'd like to see more of and we never see anymore, is a complete edition of a game re-released later where they have all that DLC and everything on top of it. And you can kind of, I guess with that, you're going to have your early adopters that buy right away, and you're also going to have your people that wait the year and a half for this game to be done being supported and they have all the content. Either way is fine with me. I just want to have that option there for players because I think it's something very important from the past. With this too, I do believe that the game would benefit from a Season of Infamy type DLC that added in more side characters and more side missions later on that can either be done after the story is completed or done on a new save file when you're playing through this game. But I also believe that it would be really interesting to see character-focused DLCs on the scale of something like Harley Quinn's Revenge or Batman Arkham Knight: A Matter of Family. I did want to outline a few of my ideas for these here as well, and my goal with these DLCs, and also with a story involving the connections between Batman and the other characters, is to make the tragedies and interactions and the decisions and story beats around all of these characters matter more in later games. I think this would fully flesh out each character and also the plot lines of later games that were sometimes criticized for not focusing enough on side characters they had tried to make you care about. Because it's interesting with something like Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson you're supposed to go into and care with the very short DLC in Arkham Knight, after really only playing as him a tiny bit in the story in a couple of little sections, basically side sections, and playing as him a tiny bit in the Arkham City DLC if you ever got it. But you're supposed to go in and really care because you're a fan of Nightwing, even though you're not a huge fan of this Nightwing because you don't know him personally. I think it would be really interesting to introduce these characters personally through these different storylines, and I think it would actually expand on and fix problems with things like City and Night later, where you're expected to care about these characters you don't know. I know it's a retroactive fix, but letting you get to know those characters now, I think is better than never having let you get to know them, and just knowing them on a shallow, surface level. It would be very impactful to play as Dick Grayson in a few missions as DLC that focused on the specific story for him moving away from Batman and actually becoming Nightwing, taking place after the main game or late into the main game. A story-based DLC for this character would be interesting and would help us discover who he is as a person, along with going through the grief he was dealing with separating from his longtime friend and mentor Batman. It could also establish that there's a lot of good in this character, and that he's not just comic relief or just funny Batman as he was sort of portrayed a little bit in Arkham, and we really only get to see him in Arkham City without any dialogue as DLC, and then a tiny bit of him, like I said, in Arkham Knight. There's not really much of him throughout this, so I think that it would impact his overall presence and add to that in the later games that already exist. This DLC would also involve a completely different map, though I think I would make it very small scale, something like Bloodhaven, but a small section of it, and I think that this would help him sort of move off on his own to become Nightwing himself. This only serves to add to the overall narrative of the character throughout the franchise. It's not like it could possibly take away from it. We already discussed this a little bit, but seeing a storyline where Jason is trying to prove himself as the new Robin and step out of the potential shadow of Dick Grayson's time as the character would be very interesting. I would not have this lead up to Jason's capture, but I would have an interaction between him and the Joker here, which would show Joker being a little fixated on this character earlier with some foreshadowing, kind of showing a weakness in Batman that he could exploit or knows that he possibly could in the future. I think that would be a very interesting and foreboding way for fans of the games to actually see this impact of his death at Joker's hands. Even though he did not necessarily die physically, Joker did torture, manipulate, and destroy Jason from the inside and outside later on in his life, and it would be interesting to sort of see the very seeds of that death of this Robin being planted in a DLC where Jason is establishing himself in Gotham City. Another DLC I would like to do is a focus on Harley Quinn being playable, and during this time she's very much still under the control of the Joker. She actually was, and it kind of still is, all the way up until the end of Arkham Knight, where she's still fixated on him even long after his death, but we do know that she breaks free of this later on because she is a primary character in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which thank God this video is coming out before that releases or I would look like an idiot, which is in the same continuity, and just from the trailer that we have seen so far, she has evolved past the character that she used to be, just a Joker pawn. I think it would be extremely interesting to sort of see an early meeting between her and Pamela Isley's Poison Ivy, sort of like a buddy cop type thing where you start to see sort of the sparks between those characters, and I still do believe that these two characters together are probably one of the best written modern character relationships in comic books. There's a lot to explore between the dichotomy of these two and the tragedies that they've both gone through that ended up bringing them together both as friends and romantically later on in the comics, and to kind of see that friendship start to build here and see them start to get a little closer and meet each other and sort of get on that same page that they end up on later, and actually having them end up on that same page later, especially by the time of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, I think would be very interesting. Even though we know it doesn't happen for years with the death of the Joker, it would be exciting to actually make her transition from that Joker-obsessed fangirl throughout the franchise to a fully developed character with some problems, who is much more fluid and interesting, who has kind of weird ties to the Bat family that would also add to her overall storyline. Again, a big point of this for me is fleshing out these characters and making them matter more than they did on a surface level in previous games. The final DLC that I think would be interesting to see would involve Selina Kyle and again be story driven. It'd be really cool to actually see her start to strike out on her own as well, following a breakup or a potential massive bump in the road with Batman from the main storyline. Again, we focused on before in the previous part, if you haven't seen it, how I want to actually have that romance sort of show up so it's not just a surface level thing again. A big problem I have with the Arkham games is not diving deep enough into each of these characters, and I want to see her sort of off on her own, doing her own thing. Some of the scenes where we see that and got to play as her in parts of Arkham City are really beloved by a lot of fans, and they found them really interesting and fun, and that they did expand the story outside of just Batman and help with world building. But I think a lot of people were really disappointed that they didn't sort of see this same thing with her inclusion in Arkham Knight. It very much reminded me of a character like Arbiter in Halo 3, where unless you're doing co-op, you're not really going to do much with that character, even though he was a primary part of the previous game. I think when you kind of jump past Arkham City to Knight, Selina's just kind of gone for the most part, and then she's playable a tiny bit in a few sections, and you can save her, and that's about it. It would be great to kind of bring back playable Selina Kyle again, and add more to the overall character while also making the world seem bigger than just Batman, because it really is. One of the reasons Batman is so beloved and interesting is because of the family around him, because of the Rogues Gallery and all of the dynamic and interesting characters in DC Comics that tie into his overall growth and storyline and work together with him to enrich the world outside of just him. One thing I would truly avoid in this game's story and inclusion is the Riddler. I do not think there is a point in bringing this character back again for the 50th time, and I think that his collectibles at this point have become annoying to a lot of players. If you do want to bring Riddler back, you do so in a tiny role where it's actual riddles. I think that that would be cool, but I have something even better than that in terms of the character. I don't think that you need to do away with collectibles and puzzles. Those are a primary cornerstone and expected world building element of the franchise, but I would actually swap out Riddler for someone else like Clue Master. Clue Master, I think, would be a really cool inclusion because he could actually end up tying into other side characters in the future, and he would be able to provide Riddler-style puzzles without just relying on Riddler trophies and Riddler monologues, because a lot of people are tired of them. It would be a little funny to see something like some Clue Master collectibles that were very obviously him ripping off the ideas of the Riddler, but also see the puzzles that Clue Master provides challenge Batman and the fans to understand the world that they are in, along with tying into Easter eggs. I think this is something that the Riddler stuff does the best when it's focusing on riddles. So with Clue Master, you focus more on puzzles. I'm not saying you couldn't have something like clue sigils or something like that, that I think would be really funny to see because they would be an obvious riff off of the Riddler, but I'd rather focus on that Clue Master portion of it, these puzzles, challenging the mind of the detective of the Dark Knight, not just the body of him to get to these things, to get to these trophies. And when you do this, I think it would allow you to make a world that's still populated by puzzles and side activities without just dragging back Riddler trophies or Enigma packs again. I think you want to avoid just being repetitive. When you make a follow-up game or a sequel, your point is not just, let's do the same thing again, or it shouldn't be. You want to take that framework and take those things that made it special, expand on them, and make it special in a different way while still providing that good experience to fans of the original thing. Both are important, and I think that both need to be focused on. Other villains that could finally be included in this are ones that are also alluded to in the universe, such as the White Rabbit, since she'd be a very fascinating interaction with someone like Batman, someone like the Mad Hatter. Sort of to kind of see her in this game would be really, really cool. And also seeing Scarface. For hell's sake, Scarface and the Ventriloquist are so ignored throughout the franchise of Arkham, where Scarface just shows up as a random inclusion for some Easter eggs once in a while, and that's it. It's like the most insulting and obnoxious thing ever. I really, really hate it. It's cool to see the Scarface puppet, but please just give us the ventriloquist. It doesn't need to be a huge ass thing, just a series of side missions, actually tying that character into the world and showing us he exists. It's just annoying to constantly allude to him and be like, who cares? I'm tired of the who cares. Let's see the ventriloquist. He's a big deal to me, even if he's not a major villain to a lot of people. Scarface and the ventriloquist could very easily be actually a series of missions similar to Professor Pig, but with their own twist and obviously being a little less brutal in the fashions of the killings. I think it would be something where players always actually wanted to see this character and be able to encounter him without just being an Easter egg, because he really does come off as a joke throughout the previous games, either being locked up in an evidence container or used as a prop by the Joker, or even thrown into a museum display. It's something that actually matters to a lot of people, and I think that it's not like a personal slight that they insulted Scarface, but this is a character that matters to me and to a lot of people, and we want to see him. So this is sort of my conclusion actually of the Arkham Origins sequel. I'm really glad I didn't make this one video. It would have been almost an hour, so I did my best to edit this. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are down below. Again, this was part 2. There was a part 1 obviously, so if you didn't see it, I feel like this wouldn't make as much sense. But again, I'm interested to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe for more content. I appreciate you very, very much. Again, I am not a game developer. I'm not making this. I'm not going to go throw myself onto the sword and break copyright laws and have like WB ram its legal fist up my behind. But it's just something that in a perfect world I would have loved to have seen. And I want to know if you think it's a good idea too. And if you genuinely don't, I'd love to know why. Seriously, maybe you have a better idea than me. I'm not the deity of ideas. So let me know. Have a fantastic day. As always, everyone, stay shui, and be sure to check out in the description down below all the other ways to support the channel. We appreciate you very much, including Enchanted Glamor, a wonderful place where my wife has made very beautiful jewelry and gifts for the loved ones in your life. If you've made it this far, you are obviously a dedicated viewer, and you must be a dedicated member of your family, I am assuming, or friend group, which means that you should help them out. The Martha collection is up. There's going to be all kinds of summer collection stuff going up, and my wife is starting working with resin very soon, making some very cool, beautiful, very wonderful, high-quality things befitting of a presidential office. I've got to be honest with you, you should check it out. We'll see you in the next one, and stay shui.